What if the key to healthy relationships isn't just who you choose, but how deeply you know yourself? In this powerful episode, Dr. Marni, I knew I was going to do this, Feuerman,
Perfect. You
breaks
got it
down
perfect.
what emotionally intelligent love really looks like and how to stop repeating painful patterns that keep you stuck. Welcome to the Happiness on Tap podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights for a happier, more fulfilling life. I'm your host, Leann Herron, and joining me today is Dr. Marni. I'm going to do it again. Feuerman, I should have wrote it down. A licensed psychotherapist, author, certified relationship expert with more than 20 years of experience helping individuals, couples, and families heal, grow, and reconnect. She is the author of Ghosted and Breadcrumbed: Stop Falling for Unavailable Men and Get Smart About Healthy Relationships, a book that offers straight talk and smart strategies for anyone tired of chasing love that doesn't love them back. Dr. Marni's work weaves clinical wisdom, cutting edge research, and a deep understanding of attachment and emotional patterns. Today, we explore the real roots of relationship struggles, how to work with mixed agenda couples, why emotional attunement matters more than perfection, and how to finally break free from cycles of self sabotage. Whether you are single, partnered, or somewhere in between, this episode will give new insights into what it means to build emotional safety and relational integrity from the inside out. Let's welcome Dr. Marni to the show. Dr. Marni, I am so excited to have you join us today.
Thank you, Leann. It's wonderful to be here.
We're going to go ahead and get started right away. Let's start by having you tell the audience a little about you and what drew you to doing the work that you do.
A little about me. So right now I am in private practice in South Florida, where my primary niche are the relationship stuff, right? So whether it's singles, couples, um, doesn't matter even the age, just working with people and trying to help them either find a healthy relationship or love, or they are struggling in their current relationship. And I do that in multiple ways, but one of the primary ways is through emotionally focused therapy, which I know we'll talk about at some point. And I also write a tremendous amount of relationship content online. And as you know, I'm an author, and I love doing interviews like this. So I do a lot of media as well to get the word out because I think it's really important. I like being part of, I guess, the group of people that help educate people about having healthy, secure relationships.
Yeah, and I think the more that we can do that and put that information out there, the less struggles people will have when they are experiencing things and they have all these questions floating around in their head. Now they have access to the internet, which I didn't have or we didn't have years ago. And now we have this abundant supply. But at the same time, I like to try to make sure that I'm working with um, knowledgeable, licensed, experienced
Right.
practitioners to
Right.
provide that information, whether as individuals and do individual podcasts, or coming up, I'm looking at starting some panel podcasts to continue to just bring this
Yeah.
information to the people who need it. So thank you so much for doing what you do, having the opportunity to be on different media platforms, to share what you do, and as an author, I think that's great. A lot of everybody learns differently. I know I do, and I love reading. So I think it's wonderful that you provide all those different avenues.
Yes. Thank you.
I'd love
Yeah.
to talk about your book, Ghosted and
Sure.
Breadcrumbed: Stop
Yeah.
Falling for Unavailable Men and Get Smart About Healthy Relationships. It has resonated with so many women. What led you to focus on the patterns behind emotionally unavailable partners?
Yes, good question. And I got a little copy here, in case anyone wants to see what it looks like. Um, so I was drawn to focus on these patterns behind emotionally unavailable partners, which essentially means people who put up barriers to intimacy. And then also there, we know that there's people who choose people who have these, these types of patterns. So through the years, just working with individuals, couples who felt stuck, they felt stuck in painful repetitive relationship cycles within the relationship or with multiple partners. So maybe they had three partners that were kind of similar in that way. And I noticed how often people, despite even being intelligent and insightful, they would still keep choosing partners who could not meet their emotional needs. And so inside, it would leave these people feeling unloved, unseen, unvalued. It's a really awful feeling. So it inspired me to explore the deeper attachment wounds, belief systems, coping strategies, different things that often develop earlier in somebody's life. But that would drive them maybe towards these unfulfilling relationships. So that's, I guess, in a nutshell, why I wrote the book. And then there were a couple other things. One is that I also wrote the book, if I'm being fully honest here. It's the book that I think I needed when I was in my 20s and, dating. So definitely my own personal experience as well. And then another reason was because I was writing so much relationship content online, I would start to look at what articles seemed to resonate the most with people, what got the most views and shares. And a lot of them were around unhealthy relationships. There was one that I wrote about emotional abuse in a relationship, and it just like skyrocketed. So that kind of gave me some more proof or evidence that this sort of book was needed. And I really enjoy working with clients to help them uncover and shift these kinds of patterns to guide them towards healthier and reciprocal relationships and connections. So that's why I wrote the book.
Thank you for doing that. Like I mentioned, I think everybody learns in different ways, and having
Mhm.
those different avenues for people to look for content, information, education um, is really helpful. On your website, I'm guessing, I haven't looked at it recently, sorry about that, but that you have a lot of blogs out there that people can read, or and then just basically Google searching for your name, and they can find some of those articles that you have written.
Yes, they're like all over the place. It's like now and then sometimes things shift and change in algorithms and they end up like lots of different places were syndicated or something. So yeah, they're definitely out there and a lot on my websites. I have the two websites and there's plenty of content on both of them.
Wonderful, and we'll make sure to include those websites in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, you are also a certified emotionally focused therapist. What is that,
Yeah.
and why is that so effective for couples?
Yeah, so the emotionally focused therapy has been it's a fantastic approach and it's a structured shorter term model that was originally created to work with couples. It has since been expanded to work with families and even individuals. And the heart of it is that it focuses on creating secure emotional bonds and a healthy interdependency with others, and particularly whether it's a romantic partner, or a parent or whomever. And it's grounded in attachment theory, and we could have like a whole other show about that. But EFT helps people identify and reshape negative interactive patterns that are often driven by unmet attachment needs and underlying emotions. And so, with the couples that I work with, I do it in an experiential way, which is a really important part of the model. So, that means rather than just having them talk to me or stay in a very cognitive, top down place, I help them guide and I restructure the way they're communicating, like right in a session. So they're not just talking to me, but they're talking to their partners. They're learning how to express feelings, thoughts, vulnerability, and build empathy with each other and build trust. And so the core goal is to transform these cycles of disconnection into a healthier pattern that involves emotional safety, closeness, mutual support, resilience. They're resourcing the relationship now as opposed to becoming enemies, which happens a lot when people fight. So it's very effective. It's incredibly effective. I can tell you that through my own anecdotal experience, but also EFT has the most outcome research. So that means outcomes of actual therapy. So it's pretty much the gold standard of relationship help. So it's definitely the best we have.
I think thank you for sharing that. I
Sure.
don't know that I've learned enough about it to understand it. I mean, I attempted couples
Hmm.
therapy in my previous marriage, and that didn't work out. It ended up being I'm going and he's not going, and so that didn't work at all. And we
Right.
just didn't have that book, that anybody to help us learn how to communicate with each other.
Right.
I mean, when
Right.
things are
So,
kind of
mhm.
one-sided and, one
Yeah.
partner's meeting with one therapist and or separate sessions, you don't learn how to have that
No.
back and forth communication. I think that is so
Yeah.
valuable for
Lots
couples.
change and evolve, thank goodness, because I do hear a lot of stories of people having negative experiences in couples therapy. It's unfortunate, and I would say that's why it's also critical to have a highly skilled and trained couples therapist and someone who is certified in a model is helpful too, because then that also will tell you that there's been a third party or a board of people or people who are vetting, right? They're saying, I've seen this person's work, and I know they're good, and we're giving our stamp of approval that they meet this particular criteria. So I know there's still, a lot of issues with people, with therapists who, maybe are doing the best they can, and all of that. But I think when it comes to the systemic work, and I know we'll I think touch on that a bit, meaning more than one person is involved in the therapy. It is super critical for a therapist to know how to work with those dynamics because they're very different than one-on-one therapy. It's a whole other thing. So that's something I would love for your listeners to know if they can educate themselves a bit about what qualifies as like a therapist that works with couples.
I appreciate you explaining that, and that is really valuable information. And, I always advise people to, do their research before they select somebody to work with, maybe try a couple of sessions, see how you feel with that person. We don't always connect with somebody. And in our moments of vulnerability, that's what is really needed is that connection, but also to be assured that the person that you're working with has that level of experience of working in a couple dynamic or,
Right.
maybe even multiple partners, like a polyamorous unit. It's nice for people to know
Hmm.
that what level of experience, education that the person they're working with
Right. And now there's
has.
a lot of people who like have a specialty within a specialty. So someone might be certified even EFT and work with where a lot of the research, of course, has been with like heterosexual couples and I know they're expanding on that, right? But you could see a therapist maybe that specializes in same-sex relationships under that umbrella or poly relationships under that umbrella. So a lot of people are, I should say therapists, are getting this extensive training and they're keeping up with the research and they're really trying to do better and better. So that's really good news. Because we know not every couple that comes in is just like this garden variety situation, and it's nice to even have some additional skills that So it feels really personalized to the specific situation for that couple or
Yeah,
that
and that
relationship.
was helpful for me as a patient starting with a therapist. Um,
Mhm.
and honestly, I was clueless. I just knew I was in a state where I needed to try talk therapy to see if that would help with what I was going through. I was going through some trauma response that I had never experienced, didn't know what it was, didn't even know how to verbalize what my body was going
Mhm.
through.
Mhm.
But I knew that my primary physician really didn't have the time, the energy, the experience, and just wrote me a prescription. So I knew I needed more. I just didn't know what that was or how I would get that. And when I started seeing my therapist, one thing I disclosed to her was about the dynamic that me and my husband have. And I
Mhm.
wanted her to be aware of our dynamic because I knew that there would either be things that I might say or how I refer to my husband, that I wanted to make sure that she understood the terminology I was using, as well as me understanding the terminology that she would be using. So we had this kind of back and forth, and she
Mhm.
was wonderful and right away and said, "No, I don't have any knowledge or experience of your dynamic. I can either refer you to another therapist who does, or I'm happy to learn and listen from you as much as you're here to learn and listen from me." And so that was really helpful. But it was my lack of
Mhm.
knowledge in the search for a
Yeah.
therapist,
Yes.
because I'm just like, I need to talk to a therapist. And having people like you on the show helps share the information that not all therapists are equal, the same education,
Right.
the
Absolutely.
same, like you said, niche backgrounds and who you help.
Right. Right. And if the therapist isn't and they are willing to refer, that's wonderful too. That is a very, you have an ethical, responsible, professional person, and I'm so glad that you had that experience as well, that you were given that option because that is absolutely the right thing to do as well.
Yeah, and I appreciated it very much from my perspective that she was like,
Mhm.
and we had a great connection,
Mhm.
but she, when I was being honest about what I was looking for, she was honest about what she could and could not do for me. And I thought that was wonderful and appreciated and ethical, and
Absolutely.
it worked great for us. S-
Great.
Can you explain what mixed agenda couples are, and what makes discernment counseling
Yeah.
such a powerful tool in those situations?
Yes. So, when couples come in to see me, one of the things that I'm assessing for is their goal alignment. You can't just assume that both partners want to save this relationship, reconcile, work on it, get to a better place together. So, a mixed agenda would mean that maybe one person is leaning out or is ambivalent about working on the relationship. So they're physically showing up, in your office or online, um, but they're not in the same place as the other partner. The other partner might be, you know, I want to go full speed ahead with saving this marriage or this relationship. I love this person. I want to be with them, and the other isn't so sure. And so you can't just launch into the work. You can't just launch into couples work because you won't get any traction, and also it will be really frustrating. It's frustrating as a therapist, it can be frustrating to the couple. So discernment counseling was developed not too long ago. I'm not sure exactly when. I would say maybe 8, 10 years ago by a Dr. William Doherty, who is also just a wonderful couples therapist, researcher, professor. And he was trying to help therapists find a way to work with couples where they were in this circumstance. Because a lot of times a couples therapist will just say, "Hey, can't help you. Sorry. Your goals aren't the same. Bye." And it's not really right. It feels kind of yucky to not offer them some type of support or some type of help. So he developed a short-term specialized way, to work with these couples. And the goal at the moment they're coming in isn't necessarily to solve their problems, but to help gain clarity and confidence about the best path. And those paths are going to be explored. They're not going to be like the elephant in the room. Does somebody want divorce? Do they want separation? Are they not wanting to do anything? Are they not wanting to commit to couples therapy? Are they wanting to commit to couples therapy and they're willing to? What is their level of uncertainty or leaning out? So you work with the partner both together and partly one-on-one. So you're mixing it up for a short period of time. And so you're able to really honor their different perspectives, not making anyone feel like they're the bad guy for feeling how they're feeling. And you guide them through this structured way of making a decision. So it's kind of like a decision-making process. And we don't want to stay in that too long, so it's not endless. The average is like 3 to 5 sessions, where that's what we're focusing on is making that decision. And it's pretty powerful because there's really no other model, or there was no other model that existed to really work with these situations and help people make the next step around one of the most difficult decisions they're ever going to make, if it's a decision to divorce. So I get to ask lots of different questions and challenge people a bit more. I'm just working really differently. It's been really great to be armed with this knowledge and to know how to help people who are in this circumstance in a way that traditional couples therapy just wasn't doing or can't do.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm fascinated. I'm, I'm fascinated. I'm going to
It
look
is
more
fascinating.
into uh, Dr. Daughtry.
Doherty, yeah, Dr. William or Bill Doherty, Doherty. So if you Google him, there's a
Perfect.
lot that will come up. He's got a lot of interesting stuff. He's um, a big proponent of healthy marriages and or relationships and getting good help. So it's also for anyone in a committed, I'm using the word marriage, but anyone in a long-term committed relationship, or even they're together and they have kids together, or they live together and they've been together a long time and they're now at this critical juncture of maybe deciding to split up. So he's got a lot of good material out there for anyone that wants to search that as well.
Wonderful. I will look him up, and I will include a link to his work as well in the show notes. Like I said, I'm fascinated by it. Um, as
Yeah.
a certified life and health coach, one of my under my umbrella of life is love and relationships. And,
Hmm.
when I first started coaching people, like most coaches do, we think we can coach everyone under all of those umbrellas. So it was health and life and love and relationships and spirituality and,
Hmm.
money and all these different facets of human existence.
Hmm.
Um, but, when they advise you to pick a niche, there's a reason for it. And I, fluttered around for a couple of years and had a lot of clients come in from all different directions, whether they wanted
Hmm.
business coaching or they wanted money coaching. And I had couples that would come in, and yeah, I really didn't have that uh, assessment ability or knowledge to work with clients. And I would start, the first couple of sessions as a couple, then break off into usually working with the man separate because the woman was already in therapy,
Hmm.
um, and try to bring it back together. And I pretty quickly realized that I was way out of my depth there. And so, referring them to find
Yeah.
a good qualified relationship therapist was the best thing I could do for their relationship. And so,
Right, right. And sometimes people would, like, even when they're calling for an appointment, sometimes they aren't, I don't think bad intended, but they're not describing the problem correctly either. So they might even say, "Oh, we just need coaching." And in your mind, you know what that is, but then you get them and you start digging and asking questions and you're like, whoa, like maybe some coaching isn't right. Or and sometimes actually the reverse. We'll have people thinking that they're in such bad shape and they need therapy. And I'm like, actually, I'm hearing you're really not in that bad a shape. You probably need just a little coaching, someone to just maybe hold you accountable or set goals. But we don't need to dig into your childhood. There is no, I'm not hearing anything really traumatic or so it's interesting that what they come in with isn't always what it is. And so being a skilled question asker, yes, like knowing how to ask the right questions to get the right info is so helpful in what I do and what you do.
Yeah. But having that assessment tool, I think, is so
Yes.
valuable uh, for you from your perspective and for other relationship coaches to maybe
Hmm.
get to the answer sooner or give them different focus. And I just think it's really fascinating. I am excited to learn more
Yeah.
about it. So thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that information. In your experience, what's one common misconception people really have about relationship counseling?
Yeah, I think there's a few, but to focus on just maybe one or two, I think the biggest misconception is that um, that going in for couples counseling or relationship help is only for people like on the brink of breaking up or they're in 911 critical shape and or that it's just a last resort when in fact it can be the most effective proactively, yeah, as a tool for strengthening connection, improving communication, addressing issues before they become insurmountable or really deeply entrenched. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is that you have to be in really bad shape.
Yeah, I think that that's probably pretty common. It's like
Hmm.
when you're pregnant and you have the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. It kind of spells out some of the common things that are going to come up at each trimester of pregnancy. But there's no other books out there for like, okay, now you've had the baby, what next? Okay, now you're in a
Right,
relationship,
right,
what next? I think
right.
again, it goes back to, having that information, knowing that it's available out there or knowing that there's people out there that can walk those things with you. I think, relationship
Hmm.
counseling or education or information would be so valuable even for our, young adults.
Yeah, and the good news is that the younger generations, like millennials and on, are actually more likely to do this, like get help preventatively, and there's much less stigma for them. So that's really good news. So that's been, changing and shifting. At least we're seeing a trend that way where they're not waiting as long. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. Even if it's what I'm seeing on social media, are millennials
Hmm.
speaking out to um, looking for answers much younger in their lifetime,
Yeah.
as opposed to maybe, my group, my Gen X group of women who we only had what information was passed down to us from our parents, our grandparents. This is your only option. You get into this relationship
Right.
and you stay forever. There is no leaving. There is no divorce.
Right.
I had my own beliefs and thoughts and identity passed down to me, which was a
Yeah, 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 yeah.
traditional
Yeah.
Hispanic Catholic belief system. So you stayed.
Right.
There was no divorce. And if you did, then you were cast out from the church. And I went through that even as a
Right.
child when my parents divorced. But there was no guidance.
Right. There really wasn't a whole lot. And it is, thank goodness, changing.
It is.
Or if you're unhappy in the marriage, there's better options now too, to maybe see if it can, you can get on track. And so that's really good too.
Yeah, I like that. That's
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see that change happening in the world. So you have worked in both medical and mental health settings.
Yeah.
How did that shape your approach to emotional well-being and systemic therapy?
Yeah. So I think having experience both in medical and mental health settings has given me a more broader and a more integrated or holistic perspective on emotional well-being, and also what's the importance of being systemic in a therapeutic approach. And I'll explain a little bit about what that word means. I know it's a little bit of like a clinical
Mhm.
term. So, systemic therapy is a way to work in therapy that focuses on understanding individuals in context, whether that's the context of their relationship, social networks, larger social systems. Now I'm getting into like tongue twisters. So it emphasizes how patterns of interaction rather than, like problems in isolation can shape someone's feelings, their well-being, their behavior, all of that. So we're looking at the bigger, broader picture. So I think my experience has fostered an appreciation of how, physical health, stress, medical conditions, all of that can intersect with emotional functioning. And also relationships, right? So then we know it also affects your relationship dynamics. And so having that background has also made me really value and prioritize like a collaborative approach. So with other healthcare providers or other types of therapists, or like what we were just talking about, referring. If that's not my specialty, hey, I know someone else, who does just that, who would be a better, much better at this particular issue. So I want clients to feel supported, mind and body. And so the systemically working, it helps it helps me view individuals, not just, in the context of their relationships, but also like the larger biopsychosocial system, right? And all of that impacts their well-being. So I feel like it's really been a really good asset to me to have worked in lots of different, those different stratifications, including medical. And when it was medical, it was a lot of primary care. So I worked with people who had also a lot of social issues, financial problems, chronic conditions. Sometimes, like for example, a woman who was, let's say, really high functioning, and then she gets a medical condition and she loses her job. And then now she has to go to like the public health clinic, and now she's on these medications for chronic pain, and now her husband is very upset at her, and they're having problems because this is very different than the woman he married. And I mean, you could just see how I can go on and on and on. So it helps me deal with a lot of those layers with people. And so I think it's just been fortunate and helpful that I've had all those different experiences in those different settings.
Yeah, and I think that's what helped me, like I said, with my general umbrella. If somebody
Mhm.
comes to me for maybe money coaching, we do end up looking at all of the pieces of them as a person and their relationships, because when you're kind of off in one area, odds are you're off in multiple, if not all areas of your life. If you're,
Right,
like you said,
right.
you go from being
Mhm,
this highly functioning woman, this power woman in corporate America, and you're doing all these things
mhm.
and you're not taking care of yourself. And all of a sudden, you have these chronic conditions that show up because your body's been taxed for so long, your nervous system has been taxed for so long. It's now turning into these, debilitating chronic uh, issues and diagnoses.
Mhm,
And, like you said, then you lose your job and then you have the financial side. And I mean, it's just turns into
mhm.
this, you are a whole person and it is all
Right.
connected.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
having the ability to have a holistic approach, which is, what I do as well. as, a certified life and holistic health coach. So let's do mind, body, spirit all together. And so that's part of all of the questions that I like to go a little bit deeper. But then when I realize that, there may be somebody better suited to help in certain areas, as we were talking about before we started recording, that's where I use the podcast as a way to introduce people to either other modalities or
Mhm.
other professionals that are better suited. Not saying that but I know my lane and I stay in my
Yes.
lane.
Yes.
And so, it's important to me to
Yeah.
continue to bring people on the show to provide information for people that will hopefully maybe stumble across it in their journey for uh, better health, better mental health, better whole body health. Um, but to be able to provide those resources is so valuable for
Mhm.
me and to the people that I help. And, I'm happy to have you here explaining what you do because that is so, so valuable to people.
Thank you. Thanks. I so appreciate it. And I can see you have this mindset of abundance too, which is just so refreshing.
What emotional patterns do you often see in people who repeatedly find themselves in these unfulfilling or one-sided relationships?
Yeah, so in these types of situations, I would say people are often caught in a deeper attachment patterns that are shaped by early family experiences. Usually this is around, not always the mom, but we'll say primary caregiver. Okay, so the responsiveness of that caregiver, were they inconsistent, how were emotions dealt with, how was loss, trauma, all these things dealt with when somebody's growing up. So during these different developmental milestones that they're experiencing. So these experiences can create unconscious expectations about love, such as needing to overfunction to be valued or tolerating neglect, just to avoid being abandoned, or equating intensity with intimacy and all of those things. So these are often shaped by these very early experiences. And so without some really solid self-awareness, then these people may be drawn to something that feels familiar. So it's like it feels like home, okay, even if it's unhealthy. So um, you know, those dynamics then get reinforced and reinforced. Almost like, oh, I expect people to not show up for me when I need support. And then I pick somebody where it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. So so certain, whether it's, some people can do it from a book, some people can do it through coaching, some people have to do it through therapy to really uncover some of the patterns and not have what gets embedded in our implicit memory. And so that's what our unconscious is. So it's things that we're doing, but they haven't kind of come into our full awareness. And so I kind of say it like something's running the show from behind the scenes. And that's never good, right? We don't really want that. We want to be really aware of our actions and and the choices that we're making and the situations that we may be putting ourselves in without realizing it. So therapy can certainly uncover a lot of those patterns and foster that self-worth, build these, healthier reciprocal relationships, and really nail down the how and the why of what's happening so that they can make changes.
Yeah, and that is so valuable. That self-awareness piece is like the big piece of the puzzle. Like you said, you don't want somebody else driving your car. You want to know why you are experiencing these patterns. Where do they
Right.
come from? Is this really where you want to live your life? And how can you uh, really do the introspection And that's deep work. That really is difficult
It
work
is.
to do on
Mm-hmm.
your own. There is some information you can learn through different
Mm-hmm.
modalities or through books or I tried to do some of that introspection and self-awareness work at a time that my nervous system wasn't ready for that kind of work. Certainly wasn't ready for me to do it on my own. Um, but that too was enough experience for me to say, okay, I need help going
Mm-hmm.
deeper into these things, looking at,
Right.
my childhood, which my
Right.
childhood and abandonment issues go all the way back to birth for me and being adopted, and then
Wow.
being adopted into a very abusive household, and how that carried through my childhood and where that carried me into my adulthood in repeating those comfortable patterns with
Right.
relationships, and that quest for wanting a certain kind of love, but
Mm-hmm.
accepting that comfort because it
Right.
felt comfortable. Oh, this is normal.
Right.
This, yeah,
Right. This is
s-
normal.
this
This
is
is normal.
normal.
Yes. Yeah.
So breaking from those things, definitely takes some work, definitely takes some introspection. Um,
Yeah, a lot of people just wouldn't be able to without the therapy. They're just not. I mean, and that's what therapy is really designed for. And I don't want to scare anyone off it because I don't because we're kind of talking about childhood stuff and wounds and trauma and things. And it's not that we are staying in that like ad nauseum, right? But it's important. It's important to connect the dots, and we will help you do that. And then, yes, shift to the future and, how you're going to behave and act and accept with this new sense of awareness. Whereas you might just automatically be like, oh, that's the person I want to go out with. I feel so good with them. And something's being lit up. You may now pause and go, oh, wait a second. Like, I know that feeling, but what's really happening? When I learn about this person, do I like what I'm learning in spite of my feelings? Is this good for me? Is this person, are they lining up with what I think is going to be healthy in my life and what I'm talking about with that therapist I see? Or so you're going to pause to like expand that awareness and keep growing from it, and then hopefully be on your way, and that's it,
yeah,
so
no, thank
yeah.
you for explaining that and for putting the light on that. I think again, it just goes to the more information that we can provide people to help in their expectation of working with either a coach or a therapist, so they kind of know more when they go into it about what may happen, what may come up. Um, because I think sometimes we just like my experience was I just didn't know what to expect going into therapy. And so some of the things that I was learning, the child stuff, all of that was through different modalities. But then knowing that it could go great in connection with my therapy sessions. And so it's having knowledge. And to me, that's priceless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where can people connect with you? I want to make sure to include this information in the resources.
Sure. So you can find me at drmarnionline.com. That's DrMarnionline. And I also have a website specific to my psychotherapy practice, which is thetalkingsolution.com. So it's the talking solution, all one word. And that's where you can find me and all the different resources that we've been, discussing. And I know you'll also put some links and to make it easy for people. So I
But
appreciate that.
thank you. Before I forget, you are offering a free gift to my audience. Would you like to talk about that real quick?
Yes. So I know people talk about writing out goals. And so I created a goal worksheet that is specific to having a healthy relationship goal. So it's got a lot of different questions and things on there to help guide you, to help get you started thinking about, not just where you are, but where you want to be. And so I will be, giving you the link for that too, where people can access that free gift.
Thank you so much. I appreciate offering that up for people. Anything we can do to give people information and education in their hands that they can start preparing and working on, I think is so valuable. Thank you for
Sure.
sharing your deep wisdom and compassionate insight with us today. From rewiring our emotional responses to choosing healthier patterns, your work really empowers us to build lives and relationships rooted in security and not survival. If this episode spoke to you, I encourage you to check out Dr. Marni's book, Ghosted and Breadcrumbed, Stop Falling for Unavailable Men and Get Smart About Healthy Relationships. There will be a link in the show notes. And follow her powerful articles across the web. And
Mm.
to all of our listeners, remember healing your relationship patterns begins by building a deeper relationship with yourself. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep your happiness on tap. Again, Dr. Marni, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you.